Hey, good evening, everybody. I hope everyone had a wonderful weekend. I certainly did. We had a really great collector conversation on Sunday. If you haven't checked that one out, be sure to watch it on the replay. It was a lot of fun. Definitely a interesting conversation. And it even kind of dovetails into my guest this evening because, as everybody remembers, Duke was saying how he didn't think animation art was, it's more like production art to him, not a lot of creativity. And the gentleman that I have on this evening is a animation art collector as well as a comic art collector. So it'll be interesting to get his thoughts on it. I mean, I certainly feel that it's art. I have a few animation cels myself. But hey, good evening, everybody. It's nice to see everybody in the chat before we get here. As always, Alfredo and Ruben and Sabillbot was active already, wasn't he? So Jeff and Marcus and hey, everybody, Mr. Easy Go Lucky, you are always here. Thank you so much. So, hey, without further ado, let me bring Tommy Serra into the chat this evening. Good evening, Tommy. How you doing?
Hey everyone. I'm following the chats, and I guess I don't know if they were just joking around, but they're trying to guess who I was in the picture.
I know. I thought about cropping your brother off.
I know. Yeah, the other bearded guy is my brother. We are polar opposites, I guess, just like Bill and I.
Right. We were talking about that. I was trying to think of a good joke. Tommy shaved his head just so you could tell us apart. So or something anyway. But yeah. So Tommy, you reached out to me a while ago, and I just was always so busy and never was able to kind of fit anything in. But I'm glad that you were available when I finally did have the opportunity to get you on the show. So I appreciate that.
And it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to be on the show. I was just kind of recommending that it would be nice to get, different. Comic art is what we're here for, but there's other little facets within CAF, just like animation art collector. So it'd be nice to get different perspective. Now I haven't caught up, but it sounds like you've already been down that road. From a negative standpoint, I didn't catch the interview. What was?
Well, it was on the collector conversation on Sunday, and Ankur was his topic, or each collector has a topic that night. And Ankur's topic was, just places or ways to find things that are a little bit more affordable in the hobby today, and aspects of things that you could get, whether it was color guides or sketches and animation art. And then, but one of the other collectors in the group said, well, they didn't feel that animation art was really, art, because it's more like tracing, or it's not necessarily the person who was the creative person doing the sketch before the painted pieces, and it's so far removed. It's like production art it would be for comic book artwork, because essentially anybody can fill in the lines. And in a weird way, I look at it and as a collector, and I sort of think like that, but at the same time, it has so much more than that, because this was something that was moving on the screen. It's animated. It was animated. So regardless of the artistic level, you still have to be able to master a brush and be able to fill those lines in properly. So so the thought of that it's, that it wasn't art never, and I'm someone who went to art school too, that I never really thought that it wasn't art, art. It was just something different as part of the whole process. And just the fact that it was animated and, is something that just makes it all the more unique. And it's not comic art. And you have to have some level of skill to fill in the lines. I mean,
yeah, but I mean, to be honest, animation cel collecting is almost backwards from how we see comic art collecting. We want the art, we want the inks, the pencils. We don't care about the color guides. But in the animation world, everybody wants the basically the color, the end result, which truly, like if you look at some of the Disney archives, it was just women just filling in lines with paint. And then you had the sketches that were done with the animators, and then you had the rough sketches that were done with the senior animators. So in my gallery, I actually have a Wolverine intro, X-Men the Animated Series intro series. And I have rough sketches done by seniors. I got in-between sketches done by drones, and I have the final painted piece too. So people want the painted piece. It was on screen. Even though in a comic book, you see the end result color, nobody wants that. Well, right. I should say nobody. The majority of people want the other
right.
thing.
It leans the other way. And right. And I know when Ruben mentions, he was saying that, I'll pull up this comment. He was only making the point that someone who actually colors within the lines isn't quite the same. And that's true. But,
and that's totally true. I totally agree with that. I have no idea who produced that final cel. None. Sometimes I know who did the sketch, but the cel, It's somebody at the animation studio. I have no idea. Versus at comic art, you have provenance. You know who did it, and it's kind of exciting. I don't know.
Right. No, but it is. But at the end of the day, it is kind of somebody in the middle. It's not like he's the person who's running the press to print the comic book. There's somebody who has to shoot the animation cells and put them in. That's that guy. So this is like somebody who's kind of literally like right in the middle of or even though they're at the end of the process. So that again, they still have to have a little bit of skill and a little bit of talent and an eye for color. I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, it's still what we see that as a product, as a collector. Like you said, I mean, everybody wants the color cell more than the pencil sketch, because I bought a couple of Pokemon cells, a long time ago, and I really just hated the pencil sketch that came with it, because it wasn't all in blue or black. It was like in yellow and red, and and it wasn't like it matched anything for the the color of the character. It was just like whoever the animator was that was doing the pencil rough behind it just didn't really care what color pencil they were using.
I'm actually the opposite, Bill. I prefer the pencils because it is an artist that's doing it. Now, half the time you don't know who it is if it's an anime cell. Disney cells, you can kind of narrow it down to those, and I don't collect Disney, so I'm not a Disney expert, but people want the sketches because it was the 9 old men or whatever, from back in the day in the 30s and the 20s of iWorks, and they want those pencil sketches because that's the hand of the artist. And like I said, back in those days, the women did the majority of the painting. So, but it's the pretty picture. So I have both, but I prefer the drawing. That's the artist. That's the comic art side of me that prefers that side.
Well, that's cool. I mean, for me, because I don't look at, I'm not a person who would go and really build a gallery full of animation cells. I'm just collecting it for the fun of it. When I see a piece, like, I thought it was totally cool that you were able to match up that one X-Men cell I have with what was it, like the first episode of the series? I would never have guessed. I mean, that was just a random buy on eBay one day. I always wanted to get a Sentinel in color from the X-Men series, and that was it was a cool looking one, and I bought it. And who would have guessed? I mean, I didn't care. I just liked the image, and so to find out.
It's a beautiful image. That's usually what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
You think of animation and you think of 12 animation cells per second, and you add them all up, you got blinks, you got elbows, you got back of heads. To get a nice shot like yours, it's actually pretty difficult. I mean, and to be first episode, that's even luckier. Those are the type of cells that I look for. Unique cells, like intro cells, which is the equivalent, I think, of like a cover. People want covers. Well, the intro cell is what everybody sees every day, every time the show starts. So I love those type of cells as well. So, but I like pretty cells. I don't collect I'm now focused, and just to be clear, I'm very focused on Spider-Man, Wolverine, X-Men. So if you look at my gallery, there's a lot of that. And unfortunately, those are the most popular characters, so they're the harder ones to get.
Right. Rick Welch mentioned, I've never bought a cell, but if I did, it would be a heavy metal Tarna. And I can tell you, before I probably even bought the Sentinel one, that's what I always look for. And they were always for me, out of reach. I'm like, I only want to spend $50, and the Tarna would always be $80. And now they're like $250 to $550 to $1,000. And now if I ever bought anything from the heavy metal movie, I would love something like from the zombie, part with the bomber. That was like one of my favorite episodes.
Have you searched CAF? Because they're there. There are comic cells on CAF.
I know. No, there's a lot more animation art there than people would guess.
Those have some of the most views because she was topless in some of the scenes.
Right.
And some people have those cells, and I don't collect that stuff, but those get the most views on your site.
Yes, they do. I know. That's how you can always find a piece of art that we should probably be restricting by going to the most viewed artwork for that day. And at least once or twice a week, there will be something in there that our moderators have to restrict because of the subject matter. But but that's just funny. I've always looked around because I just like having, I have a few lithographs and things that I've bought in the past. So I just like a good image. And
me too. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yep.
And unfortunately, the pencils don't look as good as the other ones. So that's why in my gallery, if people peruse and look at my sketches, I always have a clip of the animation where the sketch is, so you can kind of correlate it with the color. Because frankly, there's no cells anymore. They died off in the late 90s, early 2000s. So the only thing you can get is sketches from say 2000 and on. So I
Right.
do have a lot of sketches from newer Spider-Man series and stuff like that. But it is kind of boring. But if you actually put it to the cartoon, it puts it in context and makes people, oh, that's nice. Like that's my favorite part. I have 2 steps. When I buy a cell, then I have to find it. If I don't find it, I'll get rid of it, because that's my way of authenticating it.
Okay.
So
Well, why don't you
sorry.
wait? Why don't you authenticate it before you buy it?
Well,
Or-
sometimes it's eBay. You got 5
okay,
days. You have to buy it. You take a risk.
I see.
You know, sometimes I get burned, but most of the time now I'm seasoned enough to know where it's coming from. And a lot of collectors reach out to me. Hey, I saw this Spider-Man cell. What do you think? And I can usually, if it's Spider-Man and his Amazing Friends, which is what I collect mostly, I can find it pretty quick.
Well, that's why I was totally impressed, you know, that you found that one. I would never have guessed on the piece that I had. And I'm reminded, you know, I actually, a long time ago, I had done some work for Albert, and he had given me, I don't know, probably like 10 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cells with Kevin Eastman, you know, head sketches of a turtle on them all. And I've actually got them hanging up, had them hanging up forever. I always forget that I have those, but yeah, very nice. And let's ask you, maybe you can answer this question here, because Mikhail wanted to know if did the Simpsons finally abandon doing things on cells as well?
I'm not a huge Simpson fan, but yes, I have seen a documentary where they're doing it all digitally. Even South Park, that used to cut the paper and do all the animation, they're all digital. I mean, it's probably been a while. Like I said, I'm no expert, but I think everybody's digital. Sometimes they'll sketch, scan it in, and do the painting digitally. I mean, that's how they do it. I mean, but they can also sketch digitally. Oh, it's a lot faster.
Yep,
so I mean, just like comic art, you know, everything is going that way. And man, Marcus, man, I don't know how he does it, but he comments on everything that everybody has. I mean, that's fantastic. That's great, because he comments on all of my stuff, and every time I see, oh, that's a nice piece, he's the first one to comment. I mean, that's fantastic. I just love that, you know.
You know, well, Marcus is on
someday.
He's on the payroll. He's on the payroll. That's now the secret's out. Thank you, Marcus. Shh, don't tell anybody.
And Khalil's the same way. And I've because of all these chats and the comic art fan, I've become kind of close to Ruben, and I have chatted back and forth, and now we comment on each other's stuff. So before comic art live, before these chats, before COVID, my window of comic book art knowledge and just in general what I used to do was tiny, and CAF just opened it way up. CAF Live, because now I'm learning so much, and it's just I don't collect as much comic art, but I'm enthused as to what the community is doing and the people that are adding to it. So it's people like Marcus and Ruben and Khalil and everybody on here. And it's been fantastic. Everybody you've had on your show has been amazing. And it's like exactly the people that you wanted them to be. That's them. And it's like, oh, this is nice. So I keep watching because it's like fun.
No, hey, trust me, it's been fun for me just to kind of. I always feel like I'm just the referee, the moderator up here, but the whole aspect of getting to know all the people that are here and that have been using CAF for years has been the best part of being able to hang out with everybody. Just to put that face to the name that I've seen or the handle on the site for so long. Yeah, no, and you're right. Everybody's been better than you would have ever expected. So, and not that that's a bad thing. You just don't know, and then you meet them all here, and it's great. But hey, before we lose this one comment, JC Padilla had mentioned that he picked up an Akira from you way back, man. And so he wanted to say thank you again. So there you have that.
Oh, keep it, because there was a flashback that just sold at Heritage. Whenever the big anime, it was like a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. I think it sold for $60,000.
Dang.
Yeah, it was a flashback. It was like it had a background on it, but you got to think of those sequences. It's like there's a lot of those cells out there. As a matter of fact, there was one on CAF. I won't mention who it was, but they had a pretty high price on it. I thought, there's no way this person's ever going to get this. And then the auction came. It sold for 60 whatever thousand, and then they raised their price to that, and I was like, wow. Well, hey.
Oh, yeah.
If you can get it, go for it. But
sure.
I'm priced out. I have to keep what I have, because then I'd have to sell too much to buy anything new. So I think my collecting is slowing down a little bit.
Well, as are most collectors. I mean, that's the truth, and I've seen that happen a lot. When you see something go for a record price on one of the auction houses, you'll either see somebody raise a price on CAF, or even just post something to CAF that is from the same book or very close to it. And you have to strike while the opportunity's there, and because somebody missed out, right? If that piece sold for 60 to them, and you were the underbidder at 55, you're looking for the another piece that might you can pick it up, and they know that buyer is out there because they just missed out on one. So you gotta be quick. That is for sure.
And unfortunately, every single one of my purchases that I have about 200 and some odd pieces up on CAF, have been all online. Like I have not purchased one in person. I live in Tampa, Florida. We have the Orlando MegaCon. There's some in Miami, but tell you the truth, there's not a lot of cels out there at the con. Not even comic art. I don't think I've ever seen, at least now that I'm into it more, comic art in any of their Florida shows, like they do in New York or San Diego. So this show has opened me up to like, man, I need to travel.
Right. Well, I mean, MegaCon does have a fair amount of artists that are there. So, I mean, if you look around, I mean, I haven't been there in 10 years, but they always did. I mean, I can't speak to the animation cels or whatnot, but
right.
We've been
comic art. Yeah, I'm looking for comic art, but I guess one of the things that I didn't realize, but I did after being here, I never fraternized a lot with the artist. I don't know, just because I felt I didn't know enough or something. I just didn't want to feel like a bother. I don't know. It's just a personal thing. But I guess they have portfolios and they sell their artwork at the table. I'm looking for a vendor that's got them all, like somebody like, oh my God, why am I drawing a blank? I see him every week. The dueling dealers,
you mean like Mike and Anthony, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you see their show, you see them when they're live, and they got that's what I want to see, but I don't see any of that. So it's been my mistake over the years of skipping out on all the artist tables.
Yeah,
and the lines are long. So
yeah, when I went to MegaCon it was like 5 or 6 years straight, there weren't many art dealers set up. I mean, that would have been between 2002 and 2008. And Alfredo goes down. Alfredo says Tampa has a good con. I think.
They have one in 2 weeks.
Right.
Con.
Oh, really? Because I know the MegaCon is in a month. Right. I think it's middle of August.
I guess I just didn't know how to look because all I saw was Funko Pops. Funko Pops, Funko Pops, Funko Pops. And not only that,
dominate. Yeah.
Over the years, I have teenagers now, but I used to take my kids when they were little, and you can't do anything when they're little. You have a living creature you have to maintain. So it's hard to fraternize and go around. And so I never spent a lot of time, and being that I didn't see any of the art, it was just kind of a little frustrating. So online has been my only source of purchases. And I see some people are asking about, like, cels are, I think, kind of a pain in the butt to take care of because of what some people are mentioning, like humidity. That's a big deal. You can't just take a cel, stick it in a Toya and call it good. The humidity actually, it affects the paint, and the paint will stick to that black Atoya, whatever that
right.
backing.
Well, or even the sketch. I one time
for sure.
Early, God, it was years ago. I saw someone was selling like 60 My Little Pony cels, right? And I was like, oh, my daughters were 3 and 5 or whatever, and I'm like, oh, that'd be cool. Even if they all suck, or even if only 2 of them are good, they were like $60. I get them. And it was like peeling them apart. Yes. And then in many cases, the paper was stuck to, the painted side of the cel. And so I don't even think I found one out of 60 that were any good.
Unfortunately, sometimes that happens, especially with the Japanese cels, but I have a few that way. I have successfully separated some by putting them in the freezer, by misting them, by heating them. I mean, you've named it, I've tried it. And it just doesn't work. It just, no matter what, I end up ripping the sketch.
I was waiting for you to say put it in the freezer, and I could actually get all those My Little Ponies. I still have it. It's just like
you can try it. I mean, like you said, they're dollar cels. I did it on like a $400 cel, but I ruined the sketch. But at that point, I wanted the cel. So I don't know. I some of the ones that you're going to display have them stuck because I dare not separate them. But when you get a cel, you have to put it in a bag. You have to let it breathe. You have to cut it because they're continually gassing air for the remainder of their life. Have anybody heard of vinegar syndrome? It's a real thing. Like if it's sealed, framed even sometimes, if it doesn't have a vent, they will warp, they will get a vinegar smell, and it's contagious. It's like a cancer. It'll spread to all the cells in your book. So you have to isolate it. You have to quarantine it. And even then you can't get rid of it. You can take it to professional services and they can do it. But that's another reason why I prefer the sketches. You don't have to work so I have to put micro chamber paper in with the cell to absorb the gases, to prevent the vinegar syndrome. And I have to do it every year. Every year I have to change out the bags, change out the micro chamber paper, make sure the cells are safe, make sure there's no smell. It became to do it right, it's a pain in the ass, Bill.
Right. Well, I saw Mikhail and a few others saying they're going to go grab their iToyos right now and empty them out. I feel like I should be doing that right now. Because I haven't looked at that Sentinel cell in probably 10 years. I mean,
where is it stored?
In an iToyo. in a bag.
And you know what? I mean, you're in Ohio. I don't know how humid it gets. It might be fine, but in Florida, that won't fly. It'll stick.
Right. Wow. Okay, I'm making a note because I'm going to go through a few
again,
things after this is so.
Again, think of how much comic art is out there, which there's a lot, but animation cells, there is. I can't even tell you how many. There's 16,000 cells made per 20-minute episode.
Right.
Think of all the cartoons I mean, there's millions and billions of cells out there. People throw them everywhere. I mean, it's don't only do it if you really want to preserve the cell, but I'm kind of over it a little bit.
You pretty much convinced me that I should only be collecting the sketches from the cells.
Yeah, no, don't do that. The cells are pretty. If you get it archival and framed, and it's fantastic. But I only framed one cell, and it cost me an arm and a leg, and I was like, no more. I'm not doing this again. So I keep it. CAF is like you asked at one point how people use CAF. Mm-hmm. Nobody visits and people have said it, nobody visits my CAF gallery more than myself. Right. That's where they reside, and it's easier to see, and I can see my cells, and it doesn't smell, and I don't have to worry about changing stuff out and freaking out. It's just there. So wow. I wish I had a view count of how many times I've looked at my own gallery, because it would be a lot.
Well, we actually don't inflate your count. So any counts we have.
I know. I tried.
See, everybody does it. Everybody tries it. It just doesn't work. So yeah, that was an early. We had some people who were always gaming the system early on to get their stuff in the most views. So at one point, it was people brought pitchforks to my front door and told me I had to do something about it. And so we basically wrote some programming that makes it so you can't self-inflate your own views. I mean, there's ways around it, of course. But, if you have to work that hard, then it's like it didn't matter. I wasn't gonna make it that difficult.
Yeah, I like views. Like I know you, I guess, in all these chats, use comments more as a status than views. I mean, that's just how you do it. But for me, not a lot of people are into the comic art. People do comment, but it's nothing like comic art. I mean, I'm in a teeny little subset off to the corner in what I do. So I look at my views, and I think it's a lot of views. It's like 375,000 views on my site looking at these cells. Sure. And I've clicked and I was like, okay, well, it's not me. I thought half of those would be me.
No.
But it's not. So it's people do appreciate it, but they come from everywhere. So.
Right. And Marcus mentioned that it used to work, and it did. But honestly, Marcus, it's probably been 13 years, maybe even more than that, since that programming was added. And the people that found a way to get around it would try so hard, they would generate errors that in a couple of the cases, I would see the errors get generated, and I would block that person's IP address. And invariably, like within minutes, I'd be emailed by that person being like, something's wrong with the site. I can't get on it. And then I'd be like, dude, you need to stop doing that. And it was like people that you probably would imagine, but people that I wasn't expecting to be the ones that were doing that. But at any rate, so
yeah, people think people are. I'm seeing the cat in the comments are, trying to. I didn't mean to scare anybody, and I'm not trying to take all the cells for myself, but only if they're Spider-Man cells. Those I fight pretty hard for. They're pretty rare, but But I mean, do what you want. I mean, just if it's something that you're going to keep, as we've always said, as keepers of the art, temporary keepers, I'm trying to do my best to maintain it because it's going downhill fast.
Well, but it's good. I mean, we should have probably had this conversation 6 months ago so that people could, because if anybody comes back and says, "Oh my God, it really is stuck to the paper on the inside of the Atoya sleeve," I'm going to feel bad. But this is a warning we should have put out there a while back. I mean, I didn't even know. I mean, I knew, but I guess I didn't know how bad it was. I just assumed it was just poor handling and that sort of thing. That
happens a lot. I mean, it does. You have to do your research. Again, I'm not an expert, but I just want to maintain that, I can keep my artwork in a decent condition for as long as I can. But it's the comic art is easier.
See, yeah. Well, it's looking better and better every day.
Well, actually, it's not as easy as I thought. Apparently, I've been making a mistake, and I was keeping my art in Atoya folders, but I once bought a piece, and when it was shipped to me, it was in a top loader, and I was like, "Oh, this is great! Look at this top loader; it protects it." I put all of my comic art in top loaders, and I was like, "Yes, I'll keep it in there." But apparently, that's a no-no. I didn't catch. I don't know if it's the same as cels, if it's venting gases, or if it's just whatever, but I don't know if somebody can shed light on that. But I guess you're not supposed to put them in top loaders, I guess.
I mean, I honestly, I can't say that I can comment on that in any way, and I wish that I could. That would be because that's something that we really haven't even touched on our Sunday show. Is the preservation of the art. There's so many different ways that people are managing that today, but that would be something that we should devote a whole show to, even if it was only a half hour, where we just talk about the right materials to use, the right way to preserve things.
I actually think,
and
I think it was Wonder. It was in one of the Sunday chats. I think it was. I believe it was Wonder Effin' Woman that mentioned it, and she touched upon it.
I think you're right. Yep, and look here, Rob.
And that's when I was like, "Oh crap!"
Rob and Jeff, and yes, they are not acid free. So there you have it. I'm gonna have to write this down. I'm gonna have to make this a part of an FAQ on CAF. But really, we should do probably a full on presentation on proper storage. It would make a lot of sense.
So it sounds like polyester, which is similar to what we put our cels in. Mm-hmm. They're acid free. They're archival. It's kind of the same thing. So I guess I should start doing that instead. I like the stiffness of it to keep it from folding or bending. But if it's in a toy and it's flat, it shouldn't bend anyway.
Right. Well, a lot of people will also put in acid-free backing boards, even with their comic art, and there's different ways to guarantee that it stays flat and whatnot. But again, I've never really focused or learned anything about that. So, all right, we're gonna do.
We're all learning together, Bill.
And there you go. Rob has said that he uses Mylar and archival backing boards. Yep. I mean, I think that's the most common for people who take it really, really seriously. That and it is. We all have to at the end of the day if we want this art to survive for the next generation. Yeah,
they're asking what you should store it in. It's the same as the comic art. Store it in a Mylar or I think it's polypropylene. I have to go into one of the animation cells and see what I ordered last time, but you can put them in that and it doesn't stick to the back. But you can't seal it or it'll trap the gases, so it has to vent. So it's, art is the pencil sketch is the way to
go. So Derek did want one last, or where was it? Everything's going by a little. So what would be your one final recommendation for an animation cell? Something that can breathe a little bit and.
Don't put it up against the Atoya. Definitely store it in Atoya. Don't frame them unless you want to spend a lot of money on archival acid. I mean, I think it's similar to comic art, but it kind of traps the fumes when you frame it too. So you have to vent the frame somehow. So Atoya in a propylene bag, slit open at the top so it breathes. And if you really want to get into it, micro chamber paper to suck up the fumes. But truthfully, a lot of those are the people that mishandled them previously from me getting them are typically the ones that get the vinegar syndrome and are getting bad shape. But after a year, when I open the bag, it's warped, and you can see it. It looks like, the fumes are doing. Thankfully, it's not warping the cell; it's warping the bag. And I was like, "Ooh, it's time to change that bag and put some paper in there." So,
right. So that's funny. I'm thinking back to the last time I looked at those My Little Pony cels, and I think that the bag was rippled. So, yeah, wow, yeah, I'm just in shock. I'm absolutely shocked. But man, see, you should have been my first interview back last May.
Well, I was hoping for advice, like, get a different perspective on this is how I do things from the research that I've done, but I'm curious how other people do it. So if I'm helping anybody out, fantastic. But I also like to improve my craft and see, what I can do to make things better or easier. But I don't know. And once you start showing my art, the majority of it's going to be painted cels. But I do have a couple of pencil sketches in there too. But I do like my comic art. I just don't have as much of it. But I have a soft spot for it for sure.
Well, Rob actually just asked if that was Venom Lethal Protector #1 cover on the wall.
It is, but it's a recreation by the inker Sam De La Rosa. So if you go to my site, I actually have the corner box art, the original corner box art to this magazine. So I thought it was kind of neat to have this, and I saw it go up, and I was like, oh, I gotta have it. So no, it's actually owned by Thomas Fish, I think, still on CAF. So
I think you're right too. Yeah, Tom did have it for sure. I don't check out Tom's gallery too often because it makes me cry.
A lot of people's gallery makes me cry. It's like so much good stuff, but I'm still happy at my little meager, humble collection. I enjoy it. I enjoy it looking at other people. I don't get jealous because it's there and I can see it. So
totally get you. I'll answer Clinton. There is no way to search for a user on CAF. Sadly, I know that's pretty lame, but it's kind of how it's always been, and I've never added that in there. But it's something we're looking at to just kind of probably correct at some point because we're making a whole bunch of updates in the email section right now, and we needed to search on the person who contacted you. So you could just type in Bill and bring back everybody whose name was Bill that had ever emailed you.
You don't have a separate
no, like a user.
I know you have support, but I mean, as far as like to get a hold of you for like requests or features, the enhancements, it all goes to support. There's no separate, like, just to separate the, hey, I'm in a divorce, what can I do to lock my gallery versus, hey, how about you add this to the gallery? So
right. There's no feature request. There should be one. And Rob, you're right. You can I know what he says. You can search on premium users. Well, there's at the top of the list, you can start typing a person's name. Like I could go to the premium users page and start typing Tommy, and it'll filter the list and just show me anybody whose name is Tom or Tommy as you're typing it out. And that's actually on every page, but only when every page of the like the A through Z listing of CAF members. You can't just go there and type Fish and find everybody who's got the word the name Fish in their name to go see different their CAF galleries. But it's something that, because I've heard people so mistakenly say that, oh yeah, just go to CAF and type in my name and my gallery will come up. I'm like, dang it, no, it doesn't work that way. So
yes. Speaking of galleries, I think I've sent you this previously, but I purchased a piece of art on the first amateur dueling dealers from Jordan. It was a Wolverine Buscema piece. I love that combo in that era, and I thought he was a nice guy. It was a pleasure to do business. I want to search his gallery for either more Wolverine art or something Spider-Man related, and I was like, oh, I can't. So
all right, well, I'll tell you, okay.
Well,
for a very long time, it's kind of stupid because you can actually, if you go to Comic Art Shop, now if you're a premium member and you're selling art, you have a gallery over on Comic Art Shop. If you go to Comic Art Shop, you can search the whole site, or you can search by the art for sale in a individual's shop/gallery. And and that thing's been out there since as long as we've had premium membership, so 14, 13 years. And yet I've never taken that programming and put it on CAF so that you could just be in Jordan's gallery and type in, type first appearance, and you would get every first appearance page that he's written that in there. So
yeah, exactly.
All right. After I check my cels this evening, I'll talk with Maureen about finally adding that unique feature onto CAF, because we actually have a search result page. Because what's funny is that when you know how like you can go at the bottom of your gallery, there's a section where you can just click on interior pages and it shows you all the interior pages are covered.
Yeah.
It's there. That's actually a search. That's literally passing the keyword interior page into just your record set and pulling it back. That's how we do it. And so technically there is a search in there, but you can't keyword search anything. So it's back to, like I said, I fly by the seat of my pants, and whatever's the hottest fire to put out, that's the one I'm usually focused on.
I need you to sneak in the year.
That
was. I know. I get it. I'm not.
No. I wrote it down. Because I forget about it. Every time I go to a comic art shop and I see that, I think, dang it, I keep meaning to tell Maureen we need to put a proper search over on CAF in a person's gallery. So those are two things: being able to find a user, so you don't have to actually click on galleries and click on all users and click on the letter S to go find your name. You should just be able to click on galleries, and there should be a default search always at the top of every page where you just want to type in Tommy. Boom. There's everybody with the name Tommy. That's the way it should work.
And I'm not complaining, Bill. The site is fantastic.
That's okay.
I use it every day. It's just, but when you mentioned the Excel CSV export, I was like, well, that's perfect, because I try to put descriptive and as much information I can. I have a terrible memory, so I have to write it all, include the pictures. I have to do all of that in there. So if I had a CSV, I'd be like, oh, this is it. And for insurance purposes and all that, I get it. I know you're working on it.
Well, I can tell you, it is. I actually linked it in today. If you go to your gallery report
look at that
page, there is a link at the top in the kind of in the search box where it says if you'd like to download, click here to download a CSV of your entire CAF gallery or whatever search filters you put on it, and then so it's in there. It's easily accessible now. Nobody can say they can't get to it. I figured I was going to mention it in the Thursday email so people can go in there and play around with it.
Sorry, buddy. Sorry to take your thunder.
No. Hey, it's probably better. Somebody else will try it. They'll find out that there's something broken on it, and we'll get it fixed before I announce it.
And honestly, that's a reason why I try to tune into as much of these as I can, because in conversations, things like this come up, and you get little tidbits about CAF or about stuff that is not about necessarily the collector or his art, but just stuff in general that comes out fluid. And that's the stuff that I love, because it's like, oh, he mentioned this. That's pretty cool. He might do it, even though you're planning to do something else. But I love those little tidbits about general conversations that people have.
Right. Well, the thing is, at the end of the day, and CAF has evolved so much. I mean, I always wanted to be a gallery. I thought it was more about the artists and the art. And you can tell that over time, it's more about the collectors and the art, very evenly. And yet, I was texted by somebody earlier today saying, do you have a list of the most watched galleries? As a premium member, you can watch a gallery. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no. Do you think you'd like something like, would you actually go and see who the most watched galleries are? He's like, yeah, I'd love to see that. I'd love to see who other collectors think are the coolest collections to follow. Right. And so that makes sense. But it would also make sense to maybe show you a list of who has the most animation cels, who has the most covers, who's got, and just break things out statistically to just kind of show you which collectors are, their interests are like, it kind of ties into Scott Wingo's conversation on Sunday, where he was talking about trying to understand personas of collectors. Here would be another way to kind of characterize people and see whom those top collectors are on CAF, because at the end of the day, it's as much about us as it is about the stuff we collect. And there's a lot of cool data out there that, I've been asked a lot lately on CAF. People want to know, how can I see everybody who says they're in Portugal? Because I want to figure out if I can do a meetup, right? I'd like to just email everybody. I'm in Portugal. I'd like to email, the 200 collectors that are on CAF that are there, and maybe we can arrange a get together. And I just say, well, unfortunately, only I can see that, even though I have that data, and I've never made it so you can just go see that for yourself. So people want to know, and that kind of stuff. If you tell me you're from Portugal, I should be allowed to let everybody else know you're from Portugal too. And it's so again, it's all there's so much work to be done. I could have. I could have.
Yeah, you need a full-time guy just to do feature requests.
Exactly. Well, we're working on it. So, all right. So you see, Michael, you just from Michael, he just says he downloaded his stuff, and I know he's got a lot of art. And I will tell everybody just to pause the interview just for one other second is there is a limitation on this thing that we only pull back 2,000 records of artwork. So if you have more than 2,000 records of artwork, and there are many people that do. It will generate a single link for the 1 through 2,000 pieces, and then say you have 3,000, there'll be a second link to download 2001 through 3,000, because I just didn't want it to have any like major timeout issues when we're retrieving that much data. So there's that. I don't think I wrote that in the instructions. I forgot to mention that, but yeah, that's how it works. So, and
that's a lot of pieces. I couldn't maintain something like that. I don't know how they do it, but maybe that's why they want the CSV. I don't know.
No, well, it is. And like you said earlier, I mean, a lot of people, if they're going through a divorce or there's reasons that or purposes.
Insurance, yes. That's why I want it.
Right, exactly. So you can easily pull that out, hand it to your insurance agent, because it'll show all the private data that you have. There's a column for what you paid for it if you're entering that information and what you think its value is, or even if you haven't entered it, those fields will be there. So you can just do that all on your own in Excel. Once you pull it over there, you can do all of that there. It doesn't have to be stored in CAF. But if you've been doing that all along in CAF and storing that data, it's there. So yeah. All right. We're slowly empowering the users to take control over the site and their own data like they always should have had. So, all right, back to the interview though. We've talked a lot about preservation on cels. We've got a lot of people checking out their animation cels this evening, hoping that they don't have any damage. Why don't we look at some animation cels that you've collected? And let's see, let me pull up the first. And I didn't do these in any particular order, just so you know. But
and also, just to be clear, there's all types of different animation out there. But when I started my CAF gallery, and I did put comic art, and I was very reluctant to bring over the animation art, just because even though there was a category for animation, I get it. It's like it's not comic art per se. But so most of my animation cels are comic book related animation, Wolverine, Spider-Man. So I just want to put that. Then I made the conscious decision. Yes, I'm going to move it over there. And I don't know what I was thinking. I was going to get some kind of backlash for it, but I'm sure some people maybe not like it. But no, everybody's pretty positive about it. So it's very comic focused. It's not like I have My Little Pony.
Hey. I actually have a few My Little Pony pencil sketches that were done at different shows from different people, and some published work. But anyway, that's the bane of our domain name, right? I bought it as Comic Art Fans. I went into it that way. But I mean, I don't have a problem with animation art, illustration, trading card game art, Magic the Gathering. I love all of that. I think, if you as a collector, it's something that you collect, CAF is, where else are you going to show it? I mean, there's not like there's a trading card art website or Magic the Gathering art collectors website.
And you can filter it out. That's filter what you want to see. So it's really, you tailor it to how you want. I mean, unless you're constantly looking at the new items, page, of course you're going to get a mix of everything, but just filter it out. I guess that's kind of how I saw it. So
yep. Nope.
Art is art. I kind of agree with that.
There you go. All right. So let's look at the first, again, no particular order on these. But here is a very somber looking Spidey.
It is. This is actually Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. That's the show that I watched when I was a kid. It was my favorite show. I rewatched it over and over again. And a lot of people reached out and agree, and have said the same thing, that cartoons were their gateway to comic book art, whether it be Super Friends, the old Spider-Man, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. But Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, there was 3 different seasons. The second season, they were working, I believe, on the Incredible Hulk animated series. So they shipped out all of their animation to Japan. So this is actually from the season 2, which there was only 3 episodes, all Japanese animated, from Along Came a Spidey. And it's basically the Spider-Man no more. He's taken off his costume. And I just thought, like, this is when you think cell shading and just nice, like a representation of what you want. This is it for me. And it's if you've never seen the episode, it's beautifully animated. And this is actually one of my holy grails. I actually had to purchase this from Japan. So a lot of my Japanese animated stuff comes straight from Japan. The Japan auction house is over there. You have to go through a proxy. You can't just buy in Japan and they ship it. You have to go through a third party who can communicate with the seller, who can make the purchase on your behalf, who can make the transitions, the currency translations, and then finally ship it back to you. So, but I really love this piece, and I love the episode. Those 3 episodes are the ones that people comment on the most. Along came the Iceman episode, the Firestar episode with Angelica Jinx. Everybody comments on that one, and then of course along came a Spidey with the Shocker. So I agree. I love collecting the Japanese stuff, but it's hard. It's not out there. Back in this time, they used to wash cells. So once they were done animating, they would clean the cell and reuse the acetate so they can keep, or the celluloid, to save a cost. So to them, again, just like comic art, I think that was how it was represented. It was throwaway. They didn't really necessarily think of it as art. But thankfully some survived and you can get them, but they're really hard to find. But this is one of my favorites.
How long have you had that one?
I would have to look at my CAF year. I pretty much get them and I post them, but I'd probably say, I don't know, 6-7 years or so. Probably longer than that, actually. But you can't find them, and I can't afford them.
But you went after that one. I mean, just because it was available.
It was the only one I saw. I had to get it. I was like, I've never seen this. I want it. So you pay a hefty price for things that you want, which back then wasn't so hefty. Right. But is now.
Well, like you said, with everything going digital, I mean, this stuff, you're not going to see it ever again. So, that is kind of crazy though. They wash the cells to save some cash, but
and it wasn't all I don't know which studios did it, but that's how I guess it was explained to me that some studios used to just do that. And I was like, okay, it makes kind of sense because they didn't care.
Right. Well, it's back to it's not art, so let's just wash it off and reuse it.
And 16,000 cells per 20-minute episode. What are you gonna do with all that?
Right. Where are you gonna store all that?
which they did, or reuse them. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, it's starting to make sense.
Hey, Khalil. I know he said he couldn't be on, but he's a frequent
Tommy
visitor to my site.
Serra.
Always.
Very nice. And Jeff Moy says that even Disney used to clean the cells. So there you go. I mean, a very common practice. And here's another one.
Yeah, this is from Spider-Man the Animated Series. It's kind of a bad scan, but I love Black Spider-Man. I don't know, it's just something about it. And when the cartoon came out in the early 90s, that's the first time I got to see him on screen in a cartoon. I was like, oh, this is amazing. So there was 5 or 6 seasons of Spider-Man the Animated Series, and only the first 2, from my knowledge, were cell animated, and then it went digital. A lot of the backgrounds were digital, as far as like some of the building sets, landscapes, and you can kind of tell when you watch the episode where they used computer and where they didn't. But later on, everything was colored digitally. So I managed to get these, but interesting to note about these cells is this is not a production used cell. It's a hand painted cell on a hand painted background, but I don't suppose you can zoom in on the Marvel, and you probably couldn't see it anyway, to be honest, but in that seal, it says post-production cell. So evidently from my research, these cells were kind of produced for the secondary market after the fact. So but even then, they're still super rare. You can't find them anywhere. They didn't make a whole bunch of them, but interesting to note, I can tell this wasn't screen used also because I screen match every single one of my cells, but if you look at Spider-Man's left armpit, you can see the Venom spider. It's only got 2 legs, and there's under his armpit, there's that big black spot. If you look at the cartoon, if you actually look at my site and look at the animation clip, it's painted white in the final. So that was the production cell that was actually used. So most 95% of the cells that you find that are hand painted for Spider-Man, the animated series, are post-production. So I do have one that's a solid production cell that was used that's in my gallery, but they're really hard to find. And Black Spider-Man's hard to find. And I have a couple of those in my site too.
Interesting. So was something like that, was the background also a photocopy, not the original background? I mean,
I have a mix of both. Sometimes they would put a post-production cell on a production painted background.
Mm-hmm.
So they used to offer that way. And it came with a certificate and all this stuff, but those are commanding high prices now too when you find them. But a lot of my purchases honestly came from eBay. Just getting lucky. You got to do that snipe.
Yes, that's those are words that Ruben lives by. As you know, that was the topic of one of his chats.
Oh, I remember. I actually saw that one. And one of the interesting to note in the Japanese auctions, when you go Japanese, for some reason they don't use eBay. They use Yahoo Japan. That's where they put all their auction. And every single one of their timers has an auto extension. So you can't snipe. It's impossible. So once you try to snipe, it resets the timer and adds 5 minutes to the clock. So I've seen artwork and cells and stuff go like a couple hours after the ending because people raising it every 5 minutes, and a cell that was, top or bottom tier just escalates quickly, and it's nerve-wracking. So I hate that feature. I'm glad eBay doesn't have it, but
oh yeah,
I don't know. I think some like
Comic Connect, I think.
Comic Connect, yeah.
Yeah, they have that feature, so those auctions can go long. I think Hakes also has that. Yeah, I mean, but
it's more money for the buyer or for the seller.
For the seller, for the auction house, and sure. I mean, it's just another.
I get it.
It's a different strategy, and I don't know, but you get used to it, right? On that one, it's a slow roll. You got to be prepared to sit around for a few hours, and on eBay or and Heritage, it's seconds can be extended, but with eBay, you gotta go in there with your snipe, or you gotta go in very aggressive early.
Oh yeah.
But yes, everybody else is saying sniping is the way. Oh, Ruben. Yes. All right. So let me see. Let's look at some more. This is more X-related, actually, X-Men, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, this was an eBay purchase that I got like 10 years ago. The guy couldn't sell it, and it wasn't that it was expensive. Nobody wanted it. So I immediately knew, I think he had it listed as an opening cell. And I was like, oh, I gotta have this. It came with an accompanying cell sketch, and it came with the rough of the sketch as well. I was like, wow, this is like a dream for me. And it came with, he had Len Wein, of course, one of the creators of Wolverine, sign it, and both the late Herb Trimpe and Len Wein, they both ended up signing it. But oddly enough, this past year, the person that I bought it from, I guess, opened a CAF Gallery, reached out and left me a message and told me that he, I don't know if he got word or if he knew, but this was apparently hanging in the Saban office, their headquarters, and I guess it was either in the hallway or in Avi Arad, I don't know how you pronounce his name, but in his office, they used to have this hanging up there. I was like, oh, that is so cool. So those of you who don't know, this is an opening cell. So if you look at the opening, I'm sure you can recognize it. It's when he comes out of the woods and the thing costs out. But if you go to my site, I'll have a clip so you can see exactly where it is. So I just love this cell, and to this day, this is. I know people use the term grail or whatever, but this is a grail. You can't get much better, and I've never seen another Wolverine opening painted cell before. It doesn't mean they're not out there; they're maybe hidden, but I've never seen one. So I'm very lucky to have it.
Well, congratulations! I'm an X fan, so seeing that one was great. Now, yeah, I kind of had things mixed up here, but I'm going to stick with the animation art before.
Oh, that's fine. You can do whatever you want. I just figure we can just not to bore people with animation. We can switch it up. But
okay, then we're going to switch it up.
No. That's
you get to play producer tonight. So because yes, the next artwork in my set was a Wolverine artwork.
Now, we didn't get into my backstory per se of my collecting, which I'm totally fine with. But
no,
it's fine. It's fine. I can kind of segue into it with this piece because I consider myself a late bloomer, I guess, in the comic book world. I guess I did watch cartoons. I did enjoy my Super Friends and my Spider-Man, the Amazing Friends. I watched them religiously. The episode with Wolverine, of course. I just that was my Saturday morning. I have great memories of that. But it wasn't until I was 15, 14, a friend of mine said, "Hey, do you want this comic book?" And I was like, "Sure. Why don't you want it?" And he said, "Comic book are for babies. I don't read this anymore." So I was like, "Okay." And that issue was Spider-Man versus Wolverine one-shot by Mark Bright, and I believe it's Al Williamson was the inker. So that to me, really, that I read that comic book over and over and over, and I wasn't into comic book art. And it wasn't until after reading that I started to get into it, and I started picking up Wolverine series. And it was literally, I think like the year I picked up this comic book, John Buscema came out with his Wolverine #1 series. So then I just went right into that. But this is another quote unquote grail for me because it's a piece from that magazine. It came up on Heritage. I had to have it, and this is the first time that I purchased something knowing that I was going to have to sacrifice a lot of other pieces to get, and I'm glad I did. But I just so many memories, and that particular stance of Wolverine meditating reminds me of a lot of the Frank Miller run. There was a lot of dark shadow imageries in that, and that reminded me of that too. Another reason why I like it, but you can't find it's a one shot. So I mean, the chances of finding this are pretty slim to none now, and I had to have it. And fortunately, I have 2 in my gallery, which I dearly paid for. But
well, that's a wonderful example, and yeah, if you want, I understand why you had to go for it, right? I mean, that's sometimes
so
yeah.
Most of the pieces you're going to present are what I call my grail pieces, but I do this for the love of the piece, not necessarily for the investment and I've always done it that way. Now that investment is a thing, I'm kind of glad I started early, but I couldn't afford it as an investment to this day. So I'm glad I picked it up when I did because I truly love these pieces.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm embarrassed that we didn't start with your origin story like I have done. I believe it's 100 interviews before yours, and then tonight. I told everybody this is the week where I'm trying to mix things up and change everything now that I'm officially 1 year into doing all these. So I guess
I
was starting off with you, and I didn't even know it.
No, we were on a roll. We were just talking.
We were.
It doesn't matter. My origin story doesn't matter. Just check out my gallery.
There you go.
And that's my origin. That's my story.
All right. Next artwork. Now we're going back to a cell, and then we're going to go back to a piece of comic art. I believe is the way. Well, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not showing another.
Whatever you want, Bill.
I'm showing another piece of comic art.
Oh, okay. So, like I said, after picking up that Spider-Man versus Wolverine one shot, I went to my very first comic book shop. I swear, in my memory, it was in some guy's attic, and it was like he was just selling out of there, and he had new comics, and I saw Wolverine #1, John Buscema, and I was like, at first I was confused, like, why is he wearing a dark black costume? But it's Wolverine. I like this one. I gotta have it. So this particular piece isn't from the Wolverine series run, but it's from the Marvel Comic Presents that John Buscema did at the same time. I don't know how that worked, but it's like within months of each other, he was working on these little Marvel Comic Presents stories. I don't know if it was simultaneous as the ongoing series. They both kind of tied together, but I always thought it was really weird. And it wasn't until much later with this particular piece in the corner. I love that beautiful Buscema shot. I mean, that's like classic. This was inked, I think, by Klaus. I don't think this was Al. I think this was Klaus Janson. But I was wondering, like, how does he get that netting on his face? I didn't make the correlation that could ever be some kind of makeup. I always thought, well, that's dumb. He changes into this costume, which I love, by the way. I was like, why does he put this netting on his face? So it wasn't until the number 6 of the regular series, they changed the netting to like more like a smudge. So to represent it to be more like makeup. It's supposed to be black makeup across his face. And I didn't know that till much later, but I still love the netting. I love this character. This is one that I share with George Haig. He also loves this series. So we go back and forth about, hey, if you ever decide to sell, let me know. And, this and that, but we both have this love and this was my first love. So, and I knew nothing of John Buscema before this. I didn't know any Silver Age stuff, Bronze Age. This is all I knew because I didn't know anything else. So, this is John Buscema to me. And I think a lot of people prefer the older stuff. Like his older stuff was better. I was like, well, I don't know. I was a kid and I love this piece. And also, it's got Razor Fist in it, who's coming up in the new Shang-Chi movie. And I was like, Razor Fist? That's strange. So there you go.
No, this is a funny. I love this page. That's why, and I love that picture of Wolverine. So that's why I had to do the zoom in on that one particular panel.
Oh yeah, awesome. I'm glad you did. I figured you would. And if you go to my gallery, I have more. I'm a John Buscema Wolverine collector, so I have like 7 or 8 pieces. And it's not as good as that one, but still, that's what I love collecting. So I'm a very narrow focused collector. I feel like if you're broad, you're just gonna spend a lot of money.
Right. Well, but you can spend a lot of money this way too, because if you're so focused, I mean,
true.
When you see something that you want, it's probably not going to be cheap.
That happened with the Mark Bright Wolverine page. I bought it, and the very next week, the next one came up, and I was like, oh, I gotta have that one too. So I was like, oh. So I made more sacrifices, but I got it, and I had to have it because that's the real piece. Now, animation cels, I was this broad collector. And then I lost focus, and it's like it became too much. And then I sold most of it off, and I kind of zeroed in. You kind of have to as a collector, I think.
Oh no, yeah. Well, some people can be as broad.
Yes, some people can. If you can go for it, and post it on CAF so we can see it.
Exactly. But yeah. Alfredo says he needs a Buscema Wolvie as well, and I don't think I've ever had one. So yeah. I should start looking for one too. That's just gonna that's just gonna raise the prices up.
Oh, there you go. Now I did it because now I'm talking to the core group. That's probably gonna go out and get it. But even if I don't get another one, I'm happy with it.
You have some pretty good examples already. All right, so now back to some animation cels here, and this is a pretty cool one. Yeah,
this is from. I mean, most people know Thundercats, but this is from the opening sequence of Thundercat. Arguably one of the greatest openings of all time. I've never seen it. It's got a killer soundtrack. The animation is amazing. And this is from the very beginning when he's on the mountaintop and he's getting ready to summon the other Thundercats and he's raising his sword up, the eyes opening up. But if you just look at it, it's a gorgeous cel. It's animated to perfection. This one I bought, again, from Japan. A lot of the ones that you see in the U.S., honestly, I to my knowledge, it was only like the opening and the first couple episodes were really, truly animated with nice style and what I would call grace, where it was nice, smooth animation. After that, the animation just tanked and went downhill. And I believe this was animated by Pacific Animation Corporation, who is located in Japan. But a lot of the later ones, I believe, it was shipped out to Korea, which a lot of the animations houses use. Like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends in the first season and the last season, it was all Korean. It was cheap. Not that it was bad. It just steadily went bad. X-Men, the animated series, has notoriously bad cels, and there's great examples of it, but there's also really bad examples of it. Thundercats has a lot of bad examples, but the opening, the best by far. And I have a lot of opening cels from Thundercats in my gallery too.
There you go. Lots of comments on this one. This was you touched a nostalgic chord, I think. Here.
Oh, and that's the other thing is that a lot of people, when they talk to me about my cels or leave comments, like I said, they before they got into comic books and comic art, it was the cartoons that got them there. So to them, it's like nostalgia and reminiscence. So I'm happy to post it. I'm happy to have it, but that's why I love animation as well, stuff like that.
Are there any Star Blazer animation cels out there?
Of course, there are.
Hell, that was like one of my favorite.
I'll have to hook you up with the Japanese auction site, and you can check.
Because I don't know anything. I would never know. I've never looked, but that would be something cool to own.
Again, you have to narrow focus. So pick what you want and stick with it and get it, because there's a ton out there. But yeah, I can point you in the right direction if you want.
Yes, please do. Please do. All right, let's see here. Oh, here we go.
Here's another one. Of course, everybody knows Optimus Prime. This is not from the opening, but this was what I feel is a money shot. It's a nice cel of Optimus Prime. You don't see his hands or the guns or whatever, but you can see some of the cel animation and how they shaded around the windows and stuff. But this is an authentic cel. The back when I bought it, the person that I bought it from actually commissioned the original background to be painted to go with the cel. So I got it. It's not the original painted background, but it is a matching hand-painted background to go with it. And again, Transformers, that was animated by the Japanese studio Toei. They also, I bought this one in Japan as well. They're hard to come by. Japan was like a hidden secret, but you can't even get them in Japan anymore. So, but just like some of the other was, Transformers did suffer in the later seasons from bad animation. A lot of the good animation was from season 1. I don't remember which episode, but if you go to the site, you can see a clip of where it came from. I believe it's a Dinobots episode. It might be the Insecticons or whatever, but it hit the nostalgic button. So I have more Transformer cels if you want to see on my site. So it seems Transformers, G.I. Joe, Thundercats are the American animation anime cels that American collectors seem to go after. And they're the hardest ones to go after as well. Now there's also, there's Disney and stuff, but I don't get into the Disney stuff. That's just nothing. It's there's too much, too expensive.
Right. Well, you're geared towards the comic characters.
Yeah. Of course. Exactly. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. I do have a couple of Disney related ones on my site, but I love Volkswagen Beetles. So if I can find a cel that has a Volkswagen Beetle, I'll buy one. And I have a Lilo and Stitch sketch that's in my it's in my gallery of a Volkswagen Beetle. So if I can find those, I'll get those. But I think it's the only Disney cel I have.
Very nice. I never owned a Beetle, but I did own a 71 minivan, the van, camper van.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, yeah. I had that for about 5 years before it finally fell apart.
Bay window. I get, not to get off subject a little bit, but I bought my first Volkswagen in high school, 16 years old. I still drive one to this day.
Well, I mean, I couldn't work on it.
Not as my primary car. It's just a hobby. There's no AC in it, and I'm in Florida, so I only drive in the winter.
Yeah, that was a really big. They weren't really good at heating the dang things either in the middle of winter. When I had mine, I lived in Maine, so it was pretty darn cold driving that thing around.
Ironically, during COVID, I think you said there was an uptick in CAF. Like, I guess people had time, so they were maybe posting more or whatever. Mm-hmm. Mine went down. I posted less because it finally gave me time. COVID, the only good thing that came out of it, gave me time to restore my car. So I've had a car sitting for 10 years, never driven, in primer condition. It gave me the time to take it apart, paint it, put it together. I did everything myself. And comic art and anime cels funded the restoration of that car. So, and I mean, I look back and maybe I shouldn't have sold some of that stuff, but I mean, that's one of the things that you can do with this is that it is kind of an investment in that respect. I also bought my daughter her first car, selling some art. So,
yeah. Well, that's
oh,
great.
It's a cheap car. It's not. It's a
Oh, you didn't buy
$4,000
it?
car.
Oh, all right. Well, then again, all right. I take that back.
Yeah.
But yes, I have had a long standing love for Volkswagens. I bought a really nice fastback and then ended up selling it. I just felt like I wasn't worthy of owning it. But I always loved the square backs and the fastbacks. I thought those were really cool, and they're harder to find.
Awesome. Oh yeah, everything, and they're ridiculous. If you find a nice bus, it's in the hundreds of thousands for a restored one. So cars are going the same thing. Collectibles and cars, everything's going up. Somebody mentioned they had a Super 74 Super Beetle. Never had a Super Beetle, but I definitely had one. A lot of other years of bugs. I've owned like 6 or 7 of them, but let's get off the Beetles. Oh, but tying back into my gallery, I collect speed buggy.
Oh, sure. Oh, of course. Hell yeah.
He was a Volkswagen. He was a Volkswagen dune buggy. Mm-hmm. So on my site, I have an opening cell from. There was when you told me to pick 16 things, I was like, oh, there's no way I can pick 16. I was thinking I was going to pick less. And when I got to it, I was like, wait a minute, I could have picked 16 more. So that was probably one I could have shown. But anyway.
All right. Well, let's look. Yeah, I would have loved to have seen that. I mean, I love that cartoon.
Oh, it's on there. It's on my site.
All right. Well, it's your gallery is linked in the description on the YouTube show. So anybody who wants to pop over there and check it out, it is linked in the description. So let's look at some more cells here. We got another X-Men one.
Oh, this is another money shot cell. So if anybody remembers the Pride of the X-Men, that X-Men, everybody's calling it a prequel to X-Men the Animated Series, came out about 1988. I forget the story behind it, but this was a pilot that it was funded by Marvel. I think it was Marvel Studios, Marvel Animation Studios, or something like that. But they released it. It released on VHS. They did play it on TV a little bit, so you can't find a DVD copy. But this is just a beautiful shot. It came up. I bought this like 10 years ago. Came up on eBay. I can't believe nobody bid on it. Maybe nobody knew what it was. I knew exactly what it was. It's from the opening of the show. It's during the show. It's a fantastic shot. It's him in his brown costume. Previously, he was animated in his yellow costume in Spider-Man's Amazing Friends. But this is animated by Toei, again in Japan. I bought this cell from Japan. But this is the weird thing about cell collecting. So for the longest time, I was like, this is the best cell I'm ever going to see. Nobody's ever going to have this cell. Just last year, just like somebody finds warehouse finds or whatever, Anthony, of all people, Anthony the dealer, posted this whole entire sequence for sale. So you see it there. I have A15. Well, he had it. And on screen, mind you, this whole scene when he comes on, pops his claws, and he swipes is like 4 or 5 seconds long. So if you do the math, 12 cells per second, 4 seconds, 5 seconds long, it's like 60 cells. He posted literally all 60 cells for sale on eBay of this entire sequence. I goes, well, there goes the value of my cell. But at the same token, I had to have some because I wanted more. So he sold some sketches from the show. He sold cells from the show, but they all commanded a high price. All the cells went for $300, $400, $500 and plus. And this was like this was right before Christmas, I believe. But I was like, but still, I mean, nobody's posted one to CAF yet, so it wasn't a CAF guy that got it. I haven't seen him around. It just goes to show you, like, people buy them because they like it, and then it usually gets buried underground. So I'm still lucky to have it, but again, it's a fantastic cell. I mean, I get a lot of the stuff that I'm showing is the stuff I get most comments on.
Mm-hmm. No, very nice, and once again, a lot of people remember that one. And that's I'm sure Anthony clearly knew what he had, or he wouldn't have put them all out at once.
He knew. He started them up at $1, so they just went nuts, or whatever. He started them out $20, and Wolverine with an Australian accent.
Oh, that's right. I did see that.
Yeah, and he did. And he did in Spider-Man The Amazing Friends. His first appearance, he was Australian. I don't know why. There was a rumor that that the writers at the time, when they were trying to figure out Wolverine, were going to make him an excommunicated patriot of Australia, something like that. I don't know if the rumors are true about that. And then the cartoon's like, well, let's make him Australian just to keep up with that. I have no idea if there's any truth to that, but I thought that was kind of funny.
Well, and then we got Hugh Jackman. I think he did.
And then everybody makes that correlation. Well, look, we got Hugh Jackman, but I don't know. I don't know why they kept him Australian in Pride of the X-Men. It's been surmised that he says a line in the cartoon, like he turned to Pyro, and Pyro's Australian in the cartoon, and he says something like, "I'm gonna get you, Dingo." That was what Wolverine's line was, and I guess the voice artist assumed that he was Australian, so they made him Australian. That's the rumor I heard. I don't know if that's true.
And our one of our resident Canadians is complaining about no respect for Canada. I'm sorry, Rich. Oh man, let's see.
And it's funny. I see Jeffrey's comment about, "Hi, Adal, do you want a piece of fruit?" I don't know if you know this, Jeff. I have that cell. Bill's he's going to bring it up here in a little bit, but I have that exact cell where he says it, and I have that in my in my description.
All right. Well, that's not the next one we're going to look at, but let's see. We got a very nice.
Akira. Now, like I said, some of these Akira cells, they went nuts. There was another cell. I think it went for $78,000 at the last Heritage auction. It's like, oh my God! It was, of course, Akira, one of the smoothest animated Japanese anime, whatever you want to call it, ever made. I mean, there was countless tons of cells, but everybody wants the bike. The bike is what everybody loved about the movie. So bike cells are the ones that command a lot of money. They all command more than they used to, but bikes are going nuts. And I was fortunate enough to have this one where Kaneda's sliding. You see how they animate all the dust coming up, and in the background is the villain Tetsuo as he's mutating from all the drug. I mean, it's a pivotal moment in the cartoon. And again, I'm very happy to have this one. I don't know how many offers a week of people trying to buy this from me. And I was like, no, I'm good. Thank you very much. But I'm very fortunate. I did sell some bike cells in the past, but I usually trade up, and this is the last iteration. So I don't think I can get better than this because I can't afford anything better than this. So.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm sure I can sell it for a lot, but maybe when my daughter goes to college.
Yeah, hang on to it. You never know where it's going to end up. But so you're not one of the collectors that you don't mind getting a lot of inquiries about a piece that you're not going to sell. It's okay. I mean, does it get to? Do you sometimes want to just turn that piece off so that you don't get any more inquiries?
No, I never turn a piece off. Yeah. Nobody looks at it more than me. I like to see my pieces. It's out there for people to enjoy. I mean, somebody put it best at once. If you want, just ignore them. You don't have to respond. I feel it's rude. I usually respond with no, thank you, not for sale. Can I make you an offer? I was like, I'm not going to put a price on my artwork. I have had people reach out, give me a crazy offer, but the first thing I do is I check, do they have a CAF Gallery? Are they here? Is it some random guy? I can back search their email. Are they a dealer? Are they trying to flip my cell? So I try to get into that. So I generally don't sell a lot at all, really. But on occasion, somebody reached out, offer me something I couldn't refuse, and I have gotten rid of some, but reluctantly. But sometimes it's like, really? Okay, I'll let it go. You spoke my language. Not for sale, for sale. Generally,
and that's why people make inquiries, though, because sometimes you catch a person at the right moment when
exactly.
A lot of this hobby is just the right opportunity at just the right moment. A lot of guys will be like, it wasn't for sale. I was looking at this. There's this auction coming up in Heritage. I knew I needed the money. The offer came in, and I couldn't turn it down. So yeah, it happens all the time.
I try to answer all the emails and politely turn people down. So because you never know.
There we go. All right. So after Akira, we're going to look at something a little different.
I am a sucker for corner box art. I love corner box art. I have that Venom one that's on my series. That's on my CAF Gallery as well. This one came up, and I dare I say it was mislabeled. It was just labeled as J Scott Campbell art. 3 Spider-Man pieces, and immediately I was like, these are corner boxes. So I looked it up, and sure enough, he did some spectacular Spider-Man. J Scott Campbell did some spectacular Spider-Man alternate covers, and each one had a different corner box. And this is each of the one representing Larry Lieber is all the way to the left, then John Romita in the center, and of course Ditko on the end, his reimagining. And I just love the piece. So there was really, I don't know, I kind of wanted to give a little history on each one of them. So I separated them in my gallery so I can show, here's a Ditko side by side, here's a Romita side by side, and here's a Larry Lieber side by side, a little bit where it came from and stuff. So it is one piece, but in CAF, it's kind of separated. I love J Scott Campbell's work. It's not very big. It's almost, they're like 4 or 5 inches tall. I forget the size of it, but there's a credible detail, and he inked it himself. And I jumped on it. I had to have it, and I'm very happy to have it.
Well, corner box art does not come up that often.
No, not at all. And my favorite character, Spider-Man. I don't have a Wolverine, but Venom is also my other favorite, and I'm fortunate enough to get one of him. So.
Yeah, all right, back to the animation cells we go.
Oh, as I was mentioning before, G.I. Joe is one of the hot buttons for American anime cartoon. Like this was technically not an anime. It was an American cartoon, but it was animated in Japan, again by Toei. And it's just anime. It's anime-like in its fluidity and its detail. And they're very hard to come by. And supposedly, I've heard rumors that all G.I. Joe cels, the warehouse they were in burned down. So they had them all stored and archived. I don't know if this was in Japan or in the U.S., but they rarely come up. And every time they do come up, they have a background with it. So this is a hand-painted cel used in the show with the original matching hand-painted background, which if you put it all together, they call it, I believe it's a master cel setup, which means, because again, if people put it into context, there's only typically one background per scene, but there could be, 3-4 seconds in a scene. So 30 to 50 cels in a scene, depending on the scene. So to have a cel and the background, it's pretty rare. So I was lucky enough to have, this is another one that gets tons of views, tons of inquiries. And Snake Eyes, he's got his movie coming out. But Snake Eyes is another one I've only seen one other cel with Snake Eyes in it. And so that's another reason why people like to hit me up and like to try to take this one from me. But this one's probably going to stay with me a little while.
Yep, I would hold on to that one too.
And I have others on my site too. They're just not as good as that one. Just a few.
All right. Well, I'm going to be checking out your CAF Gallery tonight after I check my animation. I gotta find these cels because I don't even know what. I'm really not even sure where they're at. I know they're in a Itoya, but man, I'm going to be digging.
So, yeah, 1980s Incredible Hulk. I mean, it played at the same time as Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. It was an hour. I'm sure most people remember it. This was just like, again, a nice like money shot of Hulk fully transformed into the Hulk. I actually have a cel from where he's kind of halfway Banner, halfway Hulk, kind of almost complete. So it's kind of neat to see the actual progression. But this was another one. They were really hard to find within the last 10 years. They rarely popped up. I would try to get the ones that I could, but somebody must have had a warehouse find because eBay was flooded with a bunch of these within the last year or two, and they were reasonably priced. And I was like, I gotta pick some up because this is just a gorgeous cell. So, oh, and the Bixby show, yeah, I used to watch the Bixby show too. So I was a big fan of the Hulk and Amazing Friends. That was the hour that I watched Saturday morning cartoons every morning. So this is just another great example. And I have a few more on my site as well. But
all right, I'm getting the feeling that you don't just get one example per cartoon.
Well, I mean, it depends. If the market is flooded and I can get various, I actually do. But sometimes it's just whatever I can get. Because like I said, a lot of cells they're back turned, they're blinking. It's not a full body shot, half a face. So it's hard to get a nice clean shot. So if the opportunity presents itself, I'll usually try to jump on it or make a valiant effort to get it. Just like we all do. I mean,
of course. If you can, you do.
Yeah.
All right. This next piece is, I think, the only pencil animation work that you've sent me.
Yeah. So I have a ton of pencil art. Now, this is specifically from Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. I just recently, this is within the last year or two, found an animator that worked on the show that had a bunch of the model cells. Now, those of you that don't know, a model cell, typically an animator would draw something like this, Angelica Jones, in a front view, a side view, 3/4 view. Then they would Xerox them onto a celluloid, hand paint them just to get the different views, hand it to the animator, and the animator would use those as reference when they animated the show. So I particularly love this piece because it's the original. This was Rick Holberg. He was an animator back in the early 80s who worked on the show. And the reason why I picked this one in particular, and I have more, I have a lot more. I have Angelica. I don't have any of Spider-Man. Spider-Man was actually done by Russ Heath, and I haven't found any of his pencil stuff. But I have Iceman, Firestar, Angelica, Peter, Bobby. They're all on my site. But this one in particular, John Romita Sr. was a consultant on the show. And he went and he made, just like Nick is commenting, various sketches to what he thought the character would look like. And even though they did not want to have Mary Jane in the show, they wanted Angelica to be the love interest. If you look at it, it looks exactly like MJ. And in the show, that was intentional. They didn't want MJ. They wanted, her to transform into Firestar. But I mean, just look at this. This is a Romita pose. And if you look at my site, I have like a brief history explaining, how this drawing came up. And I do have examples of Romita's concept drawings for Angelica. But I thought this was an amazing piece. I was like, that is Mary Jane all the way, and that's true. Somebody mentioned Rick Holberg also was a comic book artist. I think I don't know if it was later or before, but he also did some of those. But anyway, yeah, this is, and I get it all the time. Isn't that Mary Jane? It's like, nope, but it sure looks like her.
No, it sure does. I mean, it's unmistakable. So.
They asked if they were romantic in the show. There was an episode where Bobby Drake, Iceman, and Peter were fighting over Angelica. I mean, it wasn't like they didn't like, it wasn't, it was implied. Like, oh no, she's going to go out with me. Oh no, she's going to go out with me. But nothing ever came up. So yeah, that she was kind of a love interest in the show.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't remember the show very well. I watched it, but I'm going to have to find a way to go back and look at something.
Well, I was, 7 when it came out? 8. So I was glued, so you were probably in your teenage years,
early teenage years. Yeah. Oh man. But no, that's, those are really cool. So just another reason I'm going to be in your CAF gallery as soon as we're done here. But we got 3 more to go. 2 more pieces of comic book artwork, and I believe that infamous piece of X-Men art. So let's go to the comic book art pieces first.
Yeah, this is Mark. I didn't talk about my backstory, but after I was collecting Wolverine comic books, I solely collected Wolverine. I jumped on Spider-Man because I liked the character, and the moment I jumped into Amazing Spider-Man, it was Bagley's run. So to me, Bagley is my Spider-Man artist. I have a lot of Spider-Man represented art from Bagley on my site, some of which I've bought from Ruben in the past. But this one came up, and I was like, holy crap, it's a Mark Bagley art of my two favorite characters battling each other. So this actually came from Wizard Magazine. I don't remember the year, but they used to do almost like what if battles. Like if these two battled, what would happen? And then they would question comic book artists as to who they thought would win. And they did Spider-Man versus Wolverine. And this piece came up. But this is a good example of, I saw it, I had to have it, I bought it. There was no description of what it was or where it came from. So it probably took me a year and a half to kind of figure out it was Wizard, figure out what magazine it was. And I had the magazine. I love Wizard. And I ended up finding it. But it took a year and a half. And then finally, and I don't post things on my gallery unless I know exactly where they came from. So with animation cels, when I buy one, until I locate it, it's not going on my site. So I had this for almost 2 years before I put it on my site. But I love the piece. It's classic Bagley.
So were you buying Wizard back issues just to find that one? Or
no, I had it.
So you did have it. Okay.
My brother and I used to collect in the 90s. We collected action figures, and we both love Wizard. So we both kind of had issues of it, but I ended up finding it in one of my back issues.
Very cool. I mean, Wizard did a lot of good in that regard to get a lot more artwork out
Wizard.
there.
I miss it so much. I don't know, something about just turning the pages and reading it over and over again. Just,
I got it
getting old. I need to move on. Digital.
I loved every one of them. I mean, it was like, wow, there's something. I mean, I love the Comics Journal and a few of the other publications, but Wizard just, I was kind of out of comics for a while, and I think Wizard kind of helped bring me back into it. And and a few years later, I started collecting art. So that was so I owe a lot to Wizard for getting me back into the hobby.
Now, coincidentally, the only description that came with the piece was, and I don't know what this means. I knew a little bit, but it came from the Seamus collection or something like that. Do you know what that? I don't really know what that is. I guess he worked at Wizard or something.
They owned it, and and the father owned it. Yeah, they bought a lot of art over the years. So yes, that's
okay.
whenever you hear about that, that is that's the family, and I'm sure there's still a little bit more artwork out there, but yeah, they did unload a lot of it at the time. But yeah, they were there's many stories out there of them just because being at the shows, they would just go up, they would buy a lot of just whatever the best stuff was at an artist table, an artist alley, they'd pick up a bunch, and that was really how they just made the wonderful collection that they had back in the day.
And speaking of Bagley, I mean, the majority of my comic art is later stuff. It's 80s, it's 90s. I never read Silver Age, too many Golden Age stuff. So funny story, I was at a MegaCon probably close to 20 years ago. And back then I was into collecting back issues of Black Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man, 252 or 258 or though that I never read them because I started with Bagley and moved forward. So I was collecting those. So I had no interest in visiting artists. I don't know who many of the artists were. And it was at the end of a convention about 20 years ago. I was leaving and there was an old gentleman at a table by himself getting ready to pack up. And he's like, "How you doing?" I was like, "Hey, how are you?" And he's like, "Hey, would you like a signed copy of this artwork?" And it was a Xerox, so he just signed it and handed it to him. I was like, "Sure, okay, thanks, appreciate it." Beautiful, nice old man. Then it wasn't until swear to God, 5 years ago, I'm going through and kind of reorganizing my collection, and it was buried in the back of a comic book, and I pulled it out, John Romita Sr. And I'm like, I had no clue who he was back then because I wasn't focused on that. So that's now I look at it, I was like, God, what a dumbass. I don't know. It's just funny knowing what I know now. It's like, oh my God, I should have talked with him. I should have said something, but I had no idea who he was. He was so nice, and he doesn't do cons and stuff anymore. But it was just really good to see him. So it was just, man, crazy.
That's awesome. Yeah, he hasn't done shows in a very long while. So that's
it was like 10 years.
Wow. I mean, I've actually never seen him at a show ever. So yeah. That's a lucky you, and you didn't.
Yeah, I wish. I mean, it was so brief. I would have spent more time with him. I think he was actually surprised that maybe I didn't know who he was, or like, spend more time. He was like, "Here," I was like, "Oh, thanks," and I just kind of left.
Well, you can't go back in time,
right? Oh, hey. Speaking of Bagley, this is actually this is the first piece of comic book art I ever bought. Back to my backstory a little bit. I had read Amazing Spider-Man, the Bagley era, through Venom, through Maximum Carnage, through all of those. I kind of stopped collecting for a little bit in the early 2000s, but I was really interested in the Spider-Man movie, the one with Tobey Maguire, that was coming out. So I was part of a forum called Spider-Man Hype. And it was just people would talk about Spider-Man, the movie. Everybody's all pumped and excited to see him for the first time. And there were subcategories and subforums of just characters in the Spider-Man world. And one of those was Venom. People would post pictures of Venom, in various scans and stuff of comic book art. But somebody posted the first piece of comic book art I had ever seen. It was, of course, black and white piece. It was a Mark Bagley Venom piece. And I was like, that's when the comic art bulb went off. And I was like, wait a minute. This is way better than a comic book that sells in the hundreds of thousands. This guy's got one of one. He's got the page. And I remember I was like just floored by that. And then coincidentally, I was kind of out of comic book reading for a little bit, and Ultimate Spider-Man, his Bagley's new run with Brian Michael Bendis, had just come out. So I thought, perfect. I haven't read all the back issues of Spider-Man. I don't know much of his backstory besides what I saw in the cartoon and what I read in the later series. What a perfect time for me to jump in. So I start reading Ultimate Spider-Man, and this Venom piece came from about issue 35. So I say Venom, but it's kind of Peter Parker as Venom. But this was the first time in my life, because I had started comic book collecting with Bagley and Bagley Venom, who I knew and loved. And I hadn't seen that Venom in maybe 8 to 10 years. And I was reading Ultimate Spider-Man, the page right before this one, issue 35, page 17. It was Peter in the black suit getting angry. And when I flipped the page, I saw this, and I literally got chills. It was the first time I got chills reading a comic book, because here is my Venom that I grew up with, or, in 10 years ago, that Bagley drew. That was my favorite. This is the biggest Venom I had ever seen. But reading the comic book, it was just, I was floored. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So back to that superhero hype site that I was on, the Spider-Man hype, the guy that bought that Bagley piece ended up getting it from Artist Choice, from Spencer Beck. So that was the first time I went to his site, and I was just overwhelmed with all the Bagley pieces. But I was also shocked at how expensive it was, which in retrospect wasn't expensive at the time, but it was like, oh, comic art is expensive, more than a comic book per se. And this is before animation cels. So I bought this first. This is my first comic collecting piece. And I went to his site, and we were at, I think his site was caught up to a couple issues before. And I kept watching the site, and this piece popped up. And I couldn't contact Spencer fast enough, say, I gotta have, which was expensive at the time. For me, it was $600-700 back in 2002, 2004. I don't remember what it was. I was like, holy crap, but I have to have it. It's one of those moments. So I picked it up way back then, and to this day, it's like, this is my one and only piece. I've never felt so emotion in a piece before like this one. It's a fantastic piece. And somebody later, I didn't even know or catch that it's also the retelling of Uncle Ben getting shot. I was so enthralled about the Venom and what he looked like, and that bottom corner shot of Peter, his eyes coming through the Venom. So later on, Eddie Brock officially becomes Venom, but you can tell. I mean, it's pretty much Venom. And it's just amazing. The inker was Art Thibert. I don't know how you pronounce his name, but he was the.
I think it's T-Bear.
What is it?
I think it might be T-Bear, but I could be wrong. I'm sure Ruben will correct us all and tell us.
Funny story about that. When I was collecting my Wolverine comic books, my Buscema run with Al Williamson, issue 10. The famous Wolverine battle against Sabretooth was Sienkiewicz's first issue. And I looked at that cover and I was like, no offense to everybody, I was like, what is this crap? This is not my Al Williamson. Again, right. I know nothing of comic art. I just liked the art for what it was, and I just fell in love with Buscema. And I was like, it's Buscema? Wait a minute. And that's the first time I discovered that different inkers can represent different people in different ways. And back then I was like, who's this Sienkiewicz guy? Why did he ruin my Buscema? But later, of course, I've grown to appreciate different art styles and how he represented John Buscema. And it wasn't literally until your Comic Art Live, one of them, where you guys said, Bill Sienkiewicz. And I was like, who the hell's Bill Sienkiewicz? And then I was like, oh, it's the Sienkiewicz guy.
Right. Well, that's how I pronounced it when I was growing up too. But hey, I got it right though. Both Ruben and Jerry Raskin both confirmed it's T-Bear. So I've heard it said it's T-Bear for
French Canadian
quite some time. So I was pretty sure I was right on that.
Is it again Thibert? That's what I saw. Thibert, whatever.
I'm sure I did too. I mean, up until I actually met him at a show. I think that's how I got it corrected. One of the an early San Diego show. I ran into him and I think I said his name wrong, and he corrected it. And at any rate, it's all good. I'm sure. Can you imagine how many times Bill Sienkiewicz has had people?
Oh yeah. I mean, even John Buscema, Buscema. I've heard it all. I don't know what's right. I just say Buscema. I don't know.
I think if Ruben would have it out as Buscema, but it's like Kubert or Kubert. It's Kubert. I mean, right. You know, it's tough. It's very tough. But we have one final image to look at, and it is the one that I believe Jeffrey brought up earlier, and it is Wolverine.
Again, I don't like to use the term Holy Grail, but when I first started cell collecting, I told myself, I said, one day I would want a first appearance Wolverine cell. And lo and behold, it came up in auction in Japan. I actually contacted a fellow collector who has pretty deep pockets, and he already had a Wolverine cell from this series. And I was like, this is the most beautiful headshot I've ever seen. It's from the Hayadol, Want a Piece of Fruit episode, the famous Firestar Angelica Jinx episode with the Juggernaut, beautifully animated. It's the first time I saw a yellow costume Wolverine, and I had to have it. So I contacted the other collector. I was like, look, this is for sale. I want to go after it. Any way you can back down a little bit? And he said, nope, I'm going to go after it too. And I was like, oh, crap. Here we go. So needless to say, I did pay a lot more than I wanted to for this cell. And he was happy that I got it. I passed his threshold, but it's one of those things where I have to have it. Again, this is a birth cell, first animated appearance, and it's gorgeous. You can tell it does look different than the X-Men the Animated Series. If you put them side by side, this is more comic booky, I guess you could say, versus X-Men the Animated Series is more, I should say comic booky. I should say X-Men the Animated Series is Jim Lee-ish, and this is more, I don't know who the early Wolverine artist was back then, but maybe Byrne. I don't know. I don't want to say. Yeah, Byrne. There you go. But yeah, this is a fantastic. This is my favorite stuff. Coincidentally, this one is stuck to the sketch. That's why it's kind of a yellow background. It's back to back stuck. So, or no,
Oh, it's terrible.
it is terrible, but I dare not separate this piece. There's just no way. And one of the other things that to contend with cels that I dare not do is cels get dirty. This cell, if you can tell by the scan, is slightly dirty. So people can go in and kind of use rubbing alcohol or something, and they can clean it up. But I am not going to touch this piece because early animation, like say Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, the animator would sketch the drawing on paper. They would Xerox it. The hard lines would be on the cell, and then a colorist, a painter, would just fill between the lines.
Mm-hmm.
These cels, somebody goes with black ink and hand paints all the black lines that you see. That's hand painted. So another reason why I don't want to clean the cell is I could potentially wipe away those black lines that are on top of the cell, where traditionally all the colors are on the back of the cell. But this is also what I would call a grail piece. But yeah, this is awesome. And I have a lot more too, if you guys are interested. But this is it. This is, if you're only going to see one, this is the one.
Oh, so that's interesting. So the black lines are actually on the one side of the cell, then that's turned over and then painted from the back. So I get
that's typically Japanese style of doing it. Whereas I think Disney was the first one to pioneer Xeroxing and having the hard lines already on it, so you could just fill in the lines. I'm not an expert, I could be mistaken, but Japanese painted on top. So yeah, that's why a lot of Japanese, if you look at the other Pride of the X-Men Wolverine cell that I have, the lines are brown because the brown fades. That's from UV and stuff. So Japanese cells are notorious for black lines turning brown, which eventually turn to nothing and evaporate. So you got to keep them out of the light.
Wow. And that's, of course, that piece right there, it's never going to see sunlight ever.
No, that's why I visit CAF so much.
That's right. It's the only place you can appreciate it. Oh,
yeah, man. I mean, I do open up the folders. I think all of us go through every once in a while, look at our collection. If there's something, it definitely looks amazing. Especially since that Venom Bagley piece was my first piece. Mm-hmm. I had no idea they were 11 by 17. So I'm expecting a comic book size sheet of paper, and when I opened it, I was like, "Holy, this is amazing!" Double page splash,
right?
And it was huge. It's like, this is awesome. Comic book art is the best. I can see why it's so expensive. And then it made sense as to why it's so detailed, because it's so big. So it's just funny how you learn things as you go without knowing. But
yeah, wow. I mean, that's a pretty incredible first piece though for you to start with.
Oh yeah. I get that a lot. No regrets for sure. And that one would be in my collection for a while. So it's like I found my grail off the bat. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, I'm done. But no, I kept going. There's always a grail.
Oh, no, there's always another piece around the corner, without question. Yeah, no. But no, this was good, Tommy. I mean, I'm sorry it took us so long to do this. I'm sorry I didn't start this thing with the right.
I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to come on. I just wanted more, different types of collector. I'm glad I came on. Believe me, this has been fantastic. No. And I hope I help some people out, and know that I try hard to keep my cels comic related, so it's all relevant. And I don't know.
I actually there's another collector who I've already interviewed that wants to do a segment on their knowledge of animation art as well, and I just haven't had a chance to really work him back into the show. But I know he would be very a very good person to have on. So
awesome. I would love to hear it.
Yeah. No, I should really reach out to him because I haven't talked to him in a while, but it was one of my earlier interviews. So really interesting guy. So I'll work on that. I'll definitely work on that. Nick, you wanted to see the cover that's behind him, the recreation?
That's not the actual cover. That's a recreation from Sam De La Rosa, who inked the original, it's in Thomas Fish's CAF Gallery. So if you go to CAF and search for it, you'll find the original. So I'm not trying to fake anybody out. I just wanted something to complement the actual corner box art that I have, and I saw it. I was like, okay, I had to have it. It's the only piece I have that's not No, no, that's not true. I have a couple other unoriginal pieces, but I generally stick to original art pieces versus commissions and such. But
Sure. All right. Well, let's see. Yeah, Jason's a big X-Men comic art collector. So yeah, next one, so there we go. So see,
I mean, seeing how like you guys always talk about Byrne, and I never read X-Men, so wasn't familiar with Byrne, but through these chats, I'm getting to learn a little bit more, and it's like, wow, I really missed out on some really cool stuff back in the day when it was really cheap. So it's people like Jason that it's nice to get their perspective and see what they have, and because they have such amazing collections. Mm-hmm. Never jealous, but I'm always like, oh, that's good for them, and at least I can still see the art. So.
And Lou Sarah says, "Good job."
Yeah, that's the other guy. That's my brother. That's in the picture. We collected comic books together. Him not as much, but mainly figures. I am now getting him into art. So he just got his first piece of art from Alex Ross a couple months ago. He's starting small, but I'm trying to suck him in because I was into figures too. That takes up way too much space. And it was in the 90s where the comic books were super foil covered and all this flashy stuff. I bought into it. I bought 3 copies of everything. I did the same thing with action figures. These are going to go way up in value. I'm going to buy 7 of them and open one. And lo and behold, they're all, I sold them all. I sold them all on eBay to buy art. I said, get rid of all your action figures. Art is nice and flat. It stores well. You'll free up your closet. So I'm trying to get him to
who would have known it was the Pokemon cards and video games? That if you would have kept those, you'd be really well off today.
I know, right?
But yeah, Marcus says that first piece by Alex Ross is a very good start as well. So you both have done very, very, very well, to get going in the hobby. But yeah, listen, it's been a lot of fun, man. And again, this was a good topic. Sure. I'm so glad. I mean, it really, there's so much crossover in things.
I agree.
Who doesn't go to a comic convention and not see animation cells there, even when you're only looking for original art? I mean, they're around. I mean, I over at Berkey's house, he's probably got like 400 or 500 cells laying around. It doesn't even have time.
Really? Wow.
And he doesn't really even take the time to scan any of that stuff. It's just around. So yeah, you should hit him up. Say like, take some photographs and send them to me, because he does. He's got a lot of that. But so I mean, I've picked them up. Like I said, I've probably, if I add in the My Little Pony stack that's all stuck together, I've probably got about 70 cells. Just 60 of them are all together. So. Yeah,
Anthony in one of the dueling dealers actually had in one of the early ones, he had a Spider-Man the animated series cell and background. And it's one of those things. I think everybody kind of does the same thing. They don't claim necessarily right away, thinking, oh, maybe I can make a deal in the recap or something. So I saw it and I was like, I'm gonna wait. And somebody beat me out and claimed it and got it anyway. So, but that's okay. I mean, that's how it rolls. That's what you get for waiting. Sometimes you just gotta jump on it. But they're out there.
They are. And you should honestly, you should shoot him an email if you're in the market for something Spidey. I'm sure he's got a couple that are just laying around in a bin that he doesn't even know he has.
Yeah, listen, I got 3 teenagers. One's playing soccer, one's playing lacrosse, one's about to go to college. So I got a lot of stuff to pay for nowadays. So like I said, I'm not necessarily looking for anything, but I appreciate it. I might, one of these days, I might look out for that. But
yeah, I'll let you know, Jason, if I see a Wolverine there. And like Jeffrey said,
give it to Jason. Jason got first dibs.
To introduce other collectors to animation cell collecting and the pitfalls of also collecting animation cells.
That's true.
All right. Well, listen, man, it's been a lot of fun and I appreciate it. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, please let me know. And everybody else, tune in tomorrow night for another raucous dueling dealer episode. It's going to be a lot of fun. I've seen the art today, so there's a lot of nice pieces. I've got some new memes. I was shooting memes at Berkey's house this weekend, so we'll probably at least have 5 or 6 more comical things for you to chuckle at while we're trying to sell you some artwork.
Oh, and, Ruben, always the jokester.
Yes, exactly. But anyways, again, thanks everybody for tuning in. This was a great show.
Everybody.
Really good to have you on, Tommy. As the first
I appreciate it. I really do. Thank you. It means a lot.
All right, man. Wait, listen. Have a good night, and we'll see everybody